Because I think with the people and in filming the movie, I mean, I really have always loved to ask questions and find out about people. I really find people fascinating in general. So I think if that comes from a sincere place, then people are very willing to talk to you. And I suppose you could relate that to horses. As far as it might be easier for people than with horses, possibly.
Well, and two, I think a neat thing about how this has all turned out is that this is going to have an appeal to people that don't necessarily have much to do with horses, and that was really the intent that I hoped that Cindy would get, and that she was hoping to get, was that this has a broad appeal, just sort of in human-to-human relationships as well, that there are some things that are just going to be true about life, about how to approach things in a way that, rather than kind of forcing your will or imposing your will on someone else or something else, that doesn't generally work. And you wouldn't have to look very hard to find an example of that. Turn on the news for 2 minutes and you can find somebody having a problem somewhere in their world because they're trying to impose themselves on somebody else. And even though I spend my life directing that whole program toward people better understanding their horses, there isn't a week goes by that they don't go home and on their way home say, I guess this just wasn't about horses after all, was it?
I think that also the more you're around Buck, it does present new questions, and there's just so much every time you're with him, because he's not a cookie cutter teacher. You know, he really does adapt every situation, you know, to a personal level, to that horse, to that rider, and so you're constantly learning when you're around him, and then it invites new questions, and it makes you see more and more. And you do. It is funny how it always does. You leave there and it resonates, and it always is something about my life. And I know it applies to that person's life, but maybe in a different way. So it does get deeper and deeper on human psychology. It's quite interesting. Even though you're looking at horses, you're learning things about yourself through these horses.
You know, it is true that to a lot of people who have spent their entire life in an urban environment, their idea of what a cowboy is it's even become almost like a nasty name to call somebody. And they really don't understand that, number one, the job of being a cowboy is considered to be a well-respected craft. It takes years of study. I mean, I know cowboys that if a cow is having trouble having a calf, they're capable of roping the cow out in the pasture with no veterinary around, with a pocket knife and a needle and thread, performing a cesarean right out in the middle of a pasture while the snow's coming in sideways, and the calf lives and the cow lives. Well, if someone would perceive a fellow like that as being some sort of ignorant primitive, I'd have to argue with them a little bit there. So there are a lot of skills about being a cowboy, and I think the movies and TV has gotten people to sort of seeing him in only one light. And certainly there are people who maybe are cowboys or from that world that are just bad guys. But they would have been a bad guy if they were born in town as well. It doesn't have a lot to do with their wardrobe as much as it does their character. But there are a lot of cowboys who are surprisingly well educated, well spoken, and pretty sophisticated. But you just don't see as much of that. So I hope that people will maybe sort of rethink even their own attitude toward someone from the West or someone that's come off of a ranch or spent their life on the back of a horse.